Good evening, my dear adventurer, and welcome back to Serene Slumber Tales. Tonight, you are not merely listening to a story, you are stepping gently into it. There is no rush here, no sudden dangers leaping from shadowed corners, no thunder of cavalry, no ringing clashes of steel echoing against castle walls, only lantern light glowing like patient stars along a well-trodden path, distant wind whispering through tall grass beyond the hedgerows, and the steady rhythm of your own breath as you find your place in a quiet medieval village where small acts of courage matter just as much as grand quests. Here, bravery may look like mending a fence before the storm comes, or offering a steady hand to someone who has dropped their basket of apples. Here, stories unfold softly, like petals opening at dusk. You have been traveling for 3 days along a winding trade road, bordered by golden fields and the occasional line of old oak trees, whose branches stretch wide as if blessing every traveler who passes beneath them. The late afternoon sun rests low in the sky, casting everything in a warm amber glow that softens edges and forgives imperfections. It warms your shoulders beneath a dark blue cloak that smells faintly of cedar and home. The scent lingers like memory, your grandmother's wooden chest at the foot of her bed, the polished beams of her cottage ceiling, the forest beyond her window after rain. Your boots are still new, too new, and they give a soft squeak with each step, as if announcing your arrival before you have quite decided how you wish to be known. The leather rubs slightly at your heel, a reminder that growth is rarely entirely comfortable, but the leather will soften in time. Everything does. The road dips and rises with the shape of the land, curving gently around a sprawling oak, whose trunk is wide enough to hide a small carriage, and whose roots push up from the earth like the knuckles of a giant hand resting peacefully. You run your fingers briefly along its bark as you pass, feeling the grooves and ridges carved by decades of wind and weather. Beyond it, at last, you see the village, Fairhaven Crossing. From this distance, it looks almost ordinary. Honey-coloured stone cottages cluster together as though for warmth. Timber beams, weathered silver by sun and rain, crisscross sturdy walls. Wisps of smoke rise lazily from chimneys, curling into the sky without urgency. Yet there is something beneath that ordinariness, a hum of life, of stories waiting quietly for someone willing to notice them. The kind of stories that never make it into ballads, yet shape lives all the same. You pause for a moment and let yourself take it in fully. The village rests at the meeting of two well-worn trade routes, and the earth still carries the faint impressions of wagon wheels pressed deep by years of passage. Merchants come and go. Peddlers unload spices and bolts of cloth. News from distant cities arrives folded into conversation. But despite the steady traffic of travelers, Fairhaven has kept its character. Moss gathers along shaded rooftops as though claiming them gently for the earth. Laundry sways between windows like festival banners, simple shirts and aprons fluttering proudly in the breeze. Gardens overflow cheerfully into narrow paths, lavender brushing against stone walls, rosemary bending toward the sun, tomatoes ripening in patient clusters. Nothing is polished for show. It is lived in, tended, and loved. The beauty here is not curated. It is cultivated. At the entrance stands a wooden sign, hand-painted and slightly faded by years of weather. Fairhaven Crossing. Visitors welcome. Beneath it, in fresher lettering, and with a touch of humour that feels distinctly local, mostly peaceful. The addition is slightly crooked, as if painted by someone who was laughing too much to hold the brush steady. You can almost picture the discussion that led to it, perhaps after a runaway goat incident, or a pie-eating contest that grew unexpectedly competitive. You smile, and the tension you hadn't realized you were carrying loosens just a little. Your grandmother's letter rests safely in your pocket, its parchment softened from rereading during quiet pauses along the road. You can recall the careful slope of her handwriting without even unfolding it. She had written with her usual firmness. It is time you learn what it means to be useful. Fairhaven always has work for willing hands. Start small, think kindly, and remember, every hero begins somewhere quiet. The words had not been dramatic. They had not promised glory, but they had carried weight, the kind that settles into the heart and stays there. The thought steadies you now as your boots carry you forward. You pass beneath the wooden archway marking the village boundary and allow your pace to slow, adjusting to the rhythm of this place. The village welcomes you not with fanfare but with gentle sounds, layered together like a soft melody. The creak of a shop door opening and closing, the steady clink of a blacksmith's hammer striking iron somewhere farther down the lane, the murmur of neighbors exchanging afternoon news while leaning against sun-warmed stone. A dog dozes beneath a cart, lifting one ear as you pass before deciding you are no cause for alarm. A pair of children chase each other around a water trough, their laughter light and unburdened. There is a noticed pavilion at the center of town, sheltered by a peaked roof and surrounded by smooth wooden benches polished by years of use. Villagers gather there to post requests and offer assistance, to discuss matters both trivial and important. The repair of a fence, the scheduling of harvest days, the arrival of a traveling healer next month. A baker's laughter drifts from a nearby doorway, rich and warm as the scent of fresh bread that spills into the street. Somewhere, just beyond sight, a bard tunes a lute inside the tavern, plucking each string thoughtfully, as if testing the mood of the evening before committing to a melody. It would be easy to rush forward, to seek out something dramatic and urgent that might prove your worth in a single sweeping gesture, to imagine yourself resolving disputes or uncovering secrets before supper. But tonight, you are not here for chaos. You are here to settle in, to belong, to understand the shape of this place before trying to change it. So instead of scanning the rooftops for danger or searching the crowd for signs of trouble, you breathe in the scent of fresh bread, warm stone, and late summer herbs drying in bundles outside cottage doors. You notice the way sunlight catches on copper pots in a shop window, the way an elderly woman nods politely as you pass, as though acknowledging that you are now part of the afternoon's unfolding. And you let your first step into Fairhaven be a quiet one. Not a declaration, not a performance, simply a beginning. The tavern at the village heart is called the Briar and Barrel. Its timber frame leans ever so slightly, as if the building itself has grown comfortable with time and sees no reason to stand any straighter than it must. The beams are dark with age, smoothed by seasons of wind and rain, and the stone foundation bears the quiet strength of something built to last rather than impress. Ivy curls around its hanging sign, a painted barrel wrapped in thorny rose vines, and diamond-paned windows glow with honeyed light that spills onto the cobbled street in gentle rectangles. Even from outside, there is a sense that whatever burdens you carried through the door might loosen their grip once inside. You push the oak door open slowly. It greets you with a soft, familiar creak. Not the complaint of neglect, but the sigh of a hinge that has announced many arrivals before yours. The sound feels almost ceremonial, as though marking your crossing from traveller to guest. Warmth enfolds you at once, not just from the great hearth fire that crackles along the far wall, flames licking patiently at thick logs, but from the gentle hum of conversation and the comforting scent of stew simmering somewhere unseen, the air carries layers of fragrance, rosemary and thyme, baked crust, malted ale, and the faint sweetness of apples stored for later pies. Beeswax candles burn steadily in iron sconces, their light soft and golden rather than harsh. Wooden tables bear the marks of years of elbows, tankards, and friendly games, nicks from careless daggers, faint rings from forgotten mugs, the carved initials of people who once believed their friendships would last forever. Many of them likely did. Behind the bar stands Gareth, broad-shouldered and calm-eyed, polishing a mug with patient attention. His hair is threaded with silver at the temples, and his movements are unhurried, as if he has long ago mastered the art of letting moments unfold at their proper pace. His gaze lifts as you approach, not sharp or suspicious, simply welcoming. He does not assess you as a threat or a coin purse. He regards you as one might regard a new page in a well-loved book. "New face," he says softly. "Take your time. What would you like?" His voice carries no pressure, only invitation. You settle onto a worn wooden stool that fits you as though it has been waiting. The seat dips slightly in the center, shaped by countless evenings of conversation and quiet contemplation. When you mention your grandmother's name, Edith Moonwhisper, his expression shifts to quiet recognition, respect, perhaps even fondness. His polishing slows, and a faint smile touches the corner of his mouth. "Ah," he nods, "you've good roots then." The words land gently, but they carry weight. In a place like Fairhaven, lineage is not about grandeur. It is about character, about whether your word holds steady, about whether you leave a room warmer than you found it. Soon a bowl of shepherd's pie rests before you, steam rising in delicate spirals that curl like drifting thoughts. The ceramic is warm beneath your fingers. You take your first bite slowly, allowing the flavors to unfold without haste. The gravy is rich and savory, deepened by hours of careful simmering. The vegetables are tender but not soft, carrots and peas retaining their quiet integrity. The crust is golden and crisp, giving way with a gentle crunch that feels almost ceremonial. It tastes of patience, of simmering pots and stories told beside winter fires, of someone tasting and adjusting, until it was simply right. As you eat, you listen. Two farmers sit at the table nearest the hearth, caps resting on their knees. They speak in low tones about pumpkins disappearing from southern fields. Not one or two, but entire rows vanishing overnight, leaving only disturbed soil and a scattering of vines. One gestures with calloused hands, tracing shapes in the air as though trying to map the mystery itself. A cloaked traveller at the bar mentions seeing unfamiliar riders along the trade road, nothing overtly hostile, but watchful. Their horses were tall and dark, their cloaks bearing no obvious crest. There is concern, yes, but it is not frantic. No one pounds fists against tables. No one shouts accusations. It is the sort of problem a village believes can be solved by steady hands and measured thought. A meeting will be called. Lanterns will be lit. Plans will be made with practical calm. You feel the subtle tug of possibility. It would be easy to rise now, to introduce yourself with a flourish and offer your sword, or whatever modest magic you possess, as the solution to every whispered worry. The road has a way of teaching travelers to equate worth with action, to prove oneself quickly, decisively. Yet something in the cadence of this room suggests a different path. So you let the conversation settle like embers shifting in the hearth. You are new here. Listening is its own kind of service. Learning the rhythms before attempting to change them. You file away details, the southern fields, the timing of the disappearances, the direction the riders traveled. Not as ammunition for glory, but as threads in a tapestry you have only just begun to see. When at last you finish, you place a few coins upon the counter, their soft clink almost apologetic. Gareth glances down, then waves them away with a small shake of his head. "First meals are welcome," he says. "The rest can come later." There is no flourish to the gesture, no expectation attached. It is simply how things are done here. You incline your head in gratitude, feeling the quiet significance of the moment. Acceptance does not always arrive with ceremony. Sometimes it is a bowl of stew and a debt deferred. Outside, the sky has softened into gold and lavender. The sun sinks low, painting rooftops in gentle fire before surrendering to dusk. The air carries the faint sweetness of cooling earth and distant hay. The notice board still waits beneath its shelter at the village centre, parchment pages fluttering lightly in the evening breeze like patient birds. You approach it without urgency. Most postings are practical. Roof repairs needed before autumn rains, spare grain for trade, a reminder of market day. But somewhere beneath the murmur of bigger troubles, one small sheet catches your eye. A child's careful handwriting. Ink blotched but earnest, each letter formed with painstaking determination. "Please help. My cat Whiskers fell into the old well behind Miller's Lane. I cannot reach her. She is frightened. I will pay 2 silver pieces, my birthday coins. Signed, Leah Thornfield, age 9 summers." Beneath it, in neater script, perhaps added by a concerned adult, "The well is deep. Assistance required." You read it twice. It would be easy to dismiss such a task. After all, pumpkins are being stolen. Bandits may roam the road. There are larger concerns whispering at the edges of this village's peace. Yet your grandmother's words echo gently within you. Start small. Think kindly. You imagine a child kneeling by an old stone well, calling softly into darkness. You imagine a small, trembling creature clinging to damp stones, eyes wide in confusion. The tug of possibility shifts, grows clearer. Tomorrow, perhaps. For now, the sky deepens toward twilight, and you feel the weight of travel settling into your bones. There will be time for wells and pumpkins and riders at dawn. Tonight, you allow yourself the simple grace of arrival. You fold the image of that worried child into your thoughts like a pressed flower between pages. Then you turn toward the quiet place that will, in time, become home. Millpond Lane rests at the quieter edge of the village, where the cobblestones give way to packed earth, and the air carries the softer perfume of gardens rather than hearth smoke. Cottages nestle behind low stone walls threaded with climbing vines, their shutters painted in patient pastels that have faded gracefully under years of sun. Here, conversations are quieter, footsteps slower. The lane curves gently, as though reluctant to disturb the hush that lingers between hedgerows and flower beds. Your grandmother's home stands slightly apart, not in isolation, but in contentment. Its thatched roof dips low and welcoming, straw woven thick against wind and rain. The windows are small and diamond-paned, reflecting the lavender hues of early evening. Her garden spreads outward in a tapestry of scent and colour. Lavender in soft violet clusters, rosemary standing upright and resolute, night-blooming jasmine preparing to release its sweetness after dusk. There are stranger plants too, pale silver leaves that seem to shimmer even without breeze, tiny blue blossoms that close when shadow passes over them. curling vines with faintly luminous tips. You do not recognize all of them, and that feels exactly right. Before you can lift your hand to knock, the door opens. "There you are," Edith says, as though she had been expecting this precise heartbeat of arrival and no other. Her hair, once midnight dark, is now a cascade of silver braided loosely over one shoulder. Her eyes remain sharp, bright as polished amber. She pulls you into an embrace that smells of sage, parchment, and wood smoke. "I was beginning to think you'd been swept off by travelling merchants or distracted by tavern pie." You laugh into her shoulder, the tension of the road dissolving completely at the sound of her voice. In her arms, you are not an uncertain traveller or a would-be adventurer. You are simply hers. Inside, her cottage is warm in a different way from the tavern. The warmth here is layered and personal. Shelves brim with books whose spines range from cracked leather to carefully stitched cloth. Some titles are familiar: histories of nearby kingdoms, herbals written in tidy script, while others shimmer faintly as if reluctant to be read by just anyone. Dried herbs hang from ceiling beams in careful bundles, each tied with twine of a different colour. Curious stones rest along the mantel, smooth river rocks beside jagged crystals that catch the firelight and scatter it like captured stars. Small enchanted trinkets, nothing grand, nothing ostentatious, hum softly with restrained purpose. A thimble that never dulls a needle, a kettle that sings precisely when water reaches the perfect temperature. Nothing feels cluttered. Everything feels intentional. The hearth glows steadily, casting amber light across the wooden floor. A kettle murmurs near the fire, and somewhere in the back room, you hear the gentle tick of a clock that has kept faithful time for decades. Over stew thicker and richer than the taverns, laden with root vegetables and tender herbs from her own garden, you recount your arrival. You describe the leaning frame of the briar and barrel, Gareth's steady kindness, the farmer's concerns about pumpkins vanishing under moonlight. You mention the cloaked traveller's warning of unfamiliar riders along the trade road. As you speak, Edith listens with half-lidded eyes and the faintest hint of a smile, as though she is weighing not just your words, but the spaces between them. She does not interrupt. She does not rush you. She lets you discover your own impressions as you speak them aloud. "And what calls to you?" she asks, finally, folding her hands atop the table. The question lingers in the warm air. Not what worries you, not what impresses you, what calls to you. You hesitate only briefly before reaching into your pocket and producing the carefully folded notice about whiskers. The parchment bears the faint smudge of your thumb where you have reread it. Her expression softens the moment she sees the uneven handwriting. "A worthy beginning," she says, and there is no trace of condescension in her tone, only approval. The well behind Miller's Lane is older than the chapel. Its stones are slick with years of moss and memory, too deep for a simple rope, unless one is clever. You nod, picturing it now more clearly. The worn stones, the cool darkness below. You admit, perhaps more sheepishly than intended, that your magic remains modest at best. A spark of flame coaxed from dry tinder, a flicker of light dancing briefly at your fingertips. Useful in dim corridors perhaps, but hardly the stuff of legend. Edith leans back thoughtfully, chair creaking in quiet agreement. "Magic need not be grand to be meaningful," she murmurs. "A single candle can guide someone safely through the night. A small warmth can prevent frostbite. Power is measured less by spectacle and more by effect." She rises and crosses to a narrow cabinet, fingers brushing over small scroll cases and wrapped charms. There are ways, she continues. A levitation scroll, perhaps, though they can be temperamental if read without confidence, or a borrowed charm to lighten weight. But if such things prove complicated, there is always patience, ingenuity, and friends. She glances back at you, one brow arching slightly. The miller owes me a favour, and his eldest boy is strong as an ox, though somewhat less graceful. You smile at the image. She returns to her seat and fixes you with a look both mischievous and wise, the sort of look that once preceded lessons disguised as casual advice. Do not rush into crypts or wizard towers simply because the idea sounds impressive. Grandeur is often a distraction. Often, the truest courage is the quiet kind, the kind that kneels beside a well and coaxes a frightened creature towards safety. Her words settle into you like warm tea on a cool evening. Outside, dusk deepens fully into night. Through the window, you see lanterns flicker on one by one along Millpond Lane. The village hum quiets gradually, replaced by softer sounds. A distant door closing, a murmur fading into silence, the rhythmic chirp of crickets rising to claim the dark. That night, you sleep beneath quilts that smell of lavender and sun-dried cotton. The mattress dips familiarly beneath your weight. The window is cracked just enough to let in the cool breath of evening air. Somewhere beyond the garden fence, an owl hoots, a low, thoughtful sound that carries no alarm. No screams pierce the night. No horn signal danger. No frantic knocking disturbs the door. Your first night as an adventurer is not dramatic. It is not filled with prophecy or peril. It is safe. And in that safety, something steadier than excitement takes root, a quiet readiness, waiting patiently for morning. Morning arrives in soft gold, spilling gently across the herb garden outside Edith's cottage and slipping through lace curtains to rest upon your closed eyelids. The village does not wake abruptly. It stretches into consciousness like a contented cat in a sunbeam. A rooster calls once, then again, not in alarm, but in announcement. Somewhere along Millpond Lane, a door opens with a familiar wooden sigh. The scent of dew-kissed earth mingles with the faint sweetness of jasmine still lingering from the night before. In the small kitchen, Edith moves with quiet efficiency. Butter melts in a cast-iron pan, releasing a warm, nutty aroma as eggs sizzle gently at its center. She hums under her breath, an old melody you remember from childhood, one without clear beginning or end. When you enter, she glances up, and though her expression remains composed, there is a pride in her eyes that requires no words. "You'll want something steady in your stomach," she says, sliding a plate before you. Rescues are hungry work. After breakfast, she presses a bundle into your hands, bread wrapped in cloth, a wedge of cheese, and 2 honey cakes tied neatly with twine. "Just in case," she adds, as though such preparation was simply practical rather than affectionate. You thank her, tucking the parcel into your satchel, and step once more into the morning light. Miller's Lane lies a short walk from the village centre, narrower than the main road and lined with low stone walls softened by creeping ivy. Laundry flutters lazily overhead between cottages. The air feels cooler here, shaded by a pair of old sycamores whose leaves whisper secrets to one another. As you approach, you see her immediately. Lyra Thornfield stands beside the old stone well, small hands clenched into the fabric of her skirt. She is trying very hard not to cry. Her shoulders are squared in determination, but her eyes betray worry too large for 9 summers. When she notices you, hope flickers across her face like sudden sunlight through clouds. "You came," she says, as though she had feared you might not. "Of course," you reply gently. From within the well comes a faint, indignant meow, thin, echoing, and undeniably displeased with its circumstances. You step closer and peer over the edge. It is deep indeed. The circular stones descend in a narrowing spiral, damp with years of moss and shaded coolness. Sunlight reaches only partway down before surrendering to shadow. The air rising from below carries the scent of wet earth and old water. You cannot see the bottom clearly, only the suggestion of movement and a flash of striped fur shifting against stone. You breathe slowly, no rush. A stable boy passing nearby pauses when he hears the child's anxious voice. Without ceremony, he jogs back toward the stables and returns with a longer coil of rope draped over one shoulder. "Stronger than the one we use for hay bales," he offers shyly. The baker's apprentice, Flower still dusting her sleeves, suggests tying small knots along the rope for grip. "Makes it easier to steady things," she says, demonstrating deft fingers looping and pulling. An elderly fisherman, drawn by the gathering murmurs, recounts how he once lowered a basket to retrieve fallen apples from this very well when he was a boy. Wide and sturdy, he muses, gives the creature something to step into. Soon, without fanfare, a quiet circle of assistants forms around you. No one claims leadership. No one competes for credit. They simply contribute what they know. You study the rope, the basket borrowed from the miller's shed, the depth of the well. There will be no dramatic spells today, no luminous incantations echoing into darkness. Your magic, a small flicker of light, could help you see more clearly perhaps, but this task calls more for patience than spectacle. You secure the rope firmly around the basket's handles, testing each knot twice. The stable boy braces the rope around the well's stone lip for added friction. The fisherman positions himself opposite you, ready to steady the descent. Lyra kneels near the edge, whispering soft encouragements downward. Whiskers, "It's all right. We're here." You lower the basket slowly. The rope slides through your palms, rough but dependable. The knots pass over the stone edge, one by one. The basket descends in careful increments, swaying only slightly as it meets cooler air below. "Easy," you murmur, more to yourself than anyone else. From the darkness comes another meow, sharper now, but less panicked. You crouch closer and let a small, steady glow gather in your palm, not bright, just enough to soften the shadows. The faint light drifts downward, illuminating damp stones and finally revealing her. A small striped cat perched precariously on a narrow ledge, tail flicking in agitation. "There you are," you say softly. You speak to Whiskers as the basket descends, your voice calm and even. You tell her about the morning sun, waiting above, about Lyra's outstretched arms, about how brave she's been. The baker's apprentice adds a gentle clucking reassurance. The fisherman clears his throat softly, as though lending gravity to your words. The basket touches stone with a muted thud. Whiskers circles it once, twice. She stretches her neck to sniff the woven reeds. She withdraws, uncertain. You resist the urge to hurry. Time stretches. The rope hums faintly under tension. Lyra bites her lip, but does not interrupt. "Whenever you're ready," you whisper downward. At last, a shift of weight. The basket dips slightly, then steadies. A striped tail flicks over the rim. "Now," you say quietly. Slowly, steadily, with careful hands and villagers assisting at your side, you begin to raise the basket. Inch by inch, the rope climbs. The stable boy adjusts his grip. The fisherman guides the angle. No one rushes. No one lets the rope jerk or sway. Sunlight meets the basket first, illuminating woven reeds dampened by well air. Then, gradually, a small striped face appears over the rim, wide-eyed, whiskers twitching, indignant but safe. Lyra bursts into relieved laughter, the sound bright and unrestrained. Tears spill freely now, no longer held back by determination. She gathers Whiskers into her arms the moment the basket reaches solid ground, burying her face in soft fur. The gathered villagers offer quiet applause, not loud or overwhelming, but warm. The baker's apprentice wipes flour from her hands and smiles. The stable boy nods once, satisfied. The fisherman tips an imaginary hat. 2 silver coins are pressed into your palm. Lyra's hands tremble slightly as she offers them, but her chin lifts with earnest gratitude. "I promised," she says. You consider refusing, but you see the importance in her eyes. This is not payment alone. It is pride. It is participation in her own rescue. So you accept, closing your fingers gently around the cool metal. It is not a grand reward. There are no ballads composed, no banners unfurled, but it feels earned. And as the villagers disperse, returning to bread ovens, stables, and morning chores, you sense something subtle has shifted. A glance held a moment longer, a nod offered in passing, a place made for you in the rhythm of this lane. You do not stand at its center as a hero. You stand within it as a neighbor, and you belong a little more than you did yesterday. Word travels quickly in a village. It moves not with urgency, but with warmth, carried in passing remarks, folded into casual greetings, tucked between the exchange of bread and nails and garden cuttings. By afternoon, you begin to notice the subtle shift. The blacksmith, arms crossed and apron dusted with ash, pauses in his hammering long enough to nod respectfully as you pass his forge. It is not theatrical nor exaggerated, simply acknowledgement. Gareth, when you stop briefly at the Briar and Barrel, sets a steaming cup of tea before you instead of ale, as though sensing that steadiness suits you better than bravado. Even the cloaked traveller you glimpsed the day before inclines his head from his corner table, his eyes thoughtful rather than wary, as if recognizing in you not a rival, but a fellow solver of quiet problems. There is no parade, no proclamation, only the gentle recalibration of how you are seen. The sun dips once more toward amber and rose, painting the edges of Fairhaven Crossing in soft light that lingers lovingly on stone walls and thatched roofs. Long shadows stretch across cobbled lanes, not ominous but restful, as though the day itself is settling into a comfortable chair. You find yourself back within your grandmother's cottage, seated beside the hearth, where flames crackle in familiar rhythm. The events of the morning replay in your thoughts, not with swelling music or dramatic flourish, but with clarity. The well, the rope, the patience, the small striped face emerging into sunlight. The matter of bandits still lingers at the edge of your awareness. Pumpkins do not vanish on their own. Unfamiliar riders do not drift aimlessly without intention. There will be greater challenges ahead. The road beyond Fairhaven's fields winds toward forests, hills, perhaps even distant cities whose names carry weight in old maps. Perhaps you will meet companions, steady-hearted farmers with hidden talents, wandering scholars with ink-stained fingers, travelers who know the shape of danger and the value of laughter. Perhaps your steps will carry you far from this hearth. But tonight is not about confrontation. It is about preparation. You remove your boots and set them carefully before you. A cloth dampened with warm water smooths away the dust of the lane. You polish the leather in small, deliberate circles, feeling the material soften beneath your hands. These boots carried you here. They will carry you farther still. They deserve care. Next, you draw your cloak across your lap and examine its seams. One stitch near the hem has loosened slightly. Nothing dramatic, nothing urgent. Still, you thread a needle and mend it patiently. Each pull of thread feels symbolic in its quiet way, reinforcing not just fabric, but intention. Adventure is not sustained by grand gestures alone. It is sustained by maintenance, by attention, by tending to small weaknesses before they grow. You empty your pouch onto the wooden table and sort your modest coins into careful order. Copper here, silver there. Liar's 2 coins rest atop the small stack of earned metal, gleaming faintly in firelight. You do not see them as payment alone. You see them as proof of trust placed and trust honored. Across the room, Edith hums softly as she grinds herbs in a stone mortar. The scent of crushed mint and chamomile drifts into the air, calming and clean. She does not interrupt your quiet ritual. She does not offer unnecessary instruction. When she finally speaks, it is without looking up. You did well. The words are simple. They do not carry flourish or embellishment, but they settle into you with greater force than applause ever could. You feel it too. Not pride sharpened into arrogance, not triumph swelling beyond proportion, but a steady warmth, like embers banked carefully beneath ash. You faced a problem. You did not rush. You did not seek spectacle. You listened. You collaborated. You completed what you began. Outside, lanterns flicker to life one by one along Millpond Lane and beyond, small constellations answering the first emerging stars. The village exhales. Doors close gently. Footsteps fade. Somewhere in the briar and barrel, a lute begins a slow, familiar melody, one that speaks of winding roads and safe returns rather than conquest. The notes drift outward through open windows, weaving through lavender bushes and over low stone walls. You rise and move to the window, resting your hands against its wooden frame. The night air carries the music upward, blending it with the distant chirp of crickets and the rustle of tall grass beyond the last cottages. The sky stretches above in quiet indigo, stars appearing one by one without urgency. Tomorrow may bring longer roads. It may bring questions without immediate answers. It may bring riders whose intentions require careful discernment. There will be moments that test your courage more sharply than a moss-lined well. But you are not alone. You are learning, growing, rooting yourself in something steadier than impulse. Here in Fairhaven Crossing, beneath quiet stars and gentle lamplight, your story has begun not with thunder, but with kindness, not with conquest, but with care. And that foundation will matter when the road grows uncertain. You remain at the window a while longer, letting the music and the night settle around you like a well-fitted cloak. Your boots rest polished by the door. Your cloak lies mended and ready. Your coins are counted. Your heart, perhaps most importantly, feels aligned with the rhythm of this place. Rest now, dear adventurer. The road will still be there in the morning, patient and unhurried. And here, at Serene Slumber Tales, we will walk it softly together.